Happy day, YouTube. My name is John, and this is my channel, The Intermancer. So, the last episode, I mentioned that this episode, I was going to update the experiment process so that it refreshed the scored organism repository with every experiment. I've been thinking about it though, and I decided that instead of doing that, I would make the scored organism repository a repository, key it off of experiment, so that every experiment essentially gets its own scored organism repository, and so that I can search organisms, scored organisms, by experiment ID. So that's what we're going to do, starting with going to the context document and updating how we describe these things. So we've got experiment status, scored organism repository. Now every scored organism should have a unique ID, so this will be the same. Save scored organism. Now I'm thinking that I should maybe add experiment ID to scored organism. But then when I do the in-memory version, I want to do a map based on experiment ID. So that kind of tells me, do I want to put experiment ID at the front instead of keying it off of scored organism? But the score for an organism kind of depends on which experiment it is, because in the future I will have different evaluators, or be able to configure an evaluator in different ways. So I think that answers my question. I'm going to add experiment ID to scored organism. There you go. Delete, size, get all organism IDs. This is where I got to make my decisions, because I feel like I want to always reference, if I'm doing a set, I want to do a set relative to an experiment ID. That's the answer. Currently stored in the repository with the given experiment ID. The list contains, and since I've been moving away from organisms as distinct from their scores, I don't need to do it this way. The list contains the scored organism ID. ID property. relative to the given experiment. Get random from botter percent. String experiment ID. Not relative. For the given with the given experiment ID. Method implementations keeps records sorted by score. Maintains for each experiment ID the in-memory implementation maintains. So it uses a map of list to maintain the order and a map we don't need a map of maps because we're just looking up by ID. It uses the map when it looks up a scored organism that has the experiment ID. Okay. And uses the score property to look identity which we will refer to as the identity map. Identity. No. Which refer to as the identity map. Ordered map. Ordered entity. So just to give an idea what I'm doing, I'm trying to figure out how to express this in the cleanest way, and then I'm going to go to the AI and ask it to read this document to make sure that I have been consistent in how I've described the new feature, and then I'll ask it to implement the new feature. So now the identity map and the list are not the same. And we said that this would just be with experiment ID relative to experiment. Of the ordered list, right? Good. Scored organism string in the ordered the list. There. Ooh, and I didn't do the top, get random for the bottom percent. First retrieves the appropriate list from the ordered map. Then from bottom 100%. Okay. Okay, now since we're doing it this way and it's doing the check in the repository, the experiment cycle doesn't really need to or the experiment, the seeding section of an experiment doesn't need to do anything special. I accidentally pushed a button there. Experiment controller. So where's the run experiment? All right, I think that should do it. So I have added experiment mapping to the scored organism repository and the in-memory scored organism repository. Confirm that experimentation MD consistently describes all of its features after my edits. And suggest any updates that could improve clarity. So one thing I've been learning through this process is really working with the AI as a partner at all the different steps. My job as a developer is to maintain a structure of documents that refer to each other. So the context documents refer to the code refers to context documents, and I need to make sure that everything is consistent. But I can use the AI to help me do that. Oh, I'm still on Claude for Opus. That's unfortunate. I bet I just burned a whole bunch of tokens. Why are you... Why is it scrolling off the edge here? I saw the bar that lets me resize this. It just keeps flashing. Okay, I'll try to make it through. Okay, so it's suggesting I add a size for experiment. Okay. Size. All right, so let's just go ahead and take all that. Why isn't it giving me the little accept buttons? All right, I'm having a little bit of trouble with my IDE, so I'm just going to restart it. What happened to the buttons for accepting changes into the current window? And again with the size. Let's try getting rid of this. Okay. There we go. Now everything's there. Computers are weird. resizing, removing the project pane seems to have fixed the issue. Does experimentation MD look consistent now? Can I change this to Sonnet on the fly? Okay. Now update scored organism repository and in memory scored organism repository and to match the new description. So first we're going to do the organism repository interface and the implementation, and then the test, and then go back to, I think, the experiment cycle, figure out what other updates need to happen. So this is scored organism repository. So is that all? Okay. Okay, now the in-memory scored organism repository. Just out of curiosity, did it go ahead and do the test? Sometimes it gets a little eager. Okay, good. Did scored organism never implement? Oh, it looks like scored organism never included experiment ID update scored organism.java. Okay. All that experiment ID problems went away. In memory score does not fully implement the ScoreOrganismRepository interface. Update in memory ScoreOrganismRepository so that it implements all methods. Now I find this interesting because I'm pretty sure the context document is consistent. I asked it to look about consistency. I went through a whole section of that. So the LLM didn't get it consistent at that point, which is one of those small errors that I was watching a video on YouTube about vibe coding, and it mentioned about how these guys were working on a production project and they were instructed to implement it using vibe coding techniques, and it worked for a couple of weeks, but then these small mistakes kind of built up over time and it ended up becoming almost unmanageable. So what's it say here? Okay. Accept all. Okay. Everything looks good. What are these? Where's it a duplicate from? Huh, look at that. So the IDE is telling me that this section of code here is duplicated. What do you mean then? I guess I clicked it on that section, so it showed me this section. But one is for the bottom and the other one's for top, size -1. So I don't know what it's talking about. What are these related problems? Okay. Update experiment controller to take into account seed. All right, I'm seeing now, I'm at 37 minutes, and I'm seeing now that I'm going to have to make a little bit more invasive changes because, for example, experiment is currently a component, whereas since I will want to run new experiments, I need to make experiment not a component and have it managed by the experiment controller. So that's a little bit more invasive, and I'm not to the point where I have a good build and I can't commit. I'm at 37 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and end this video here and pick up where I left off next time. Thank you for your time.